Well, hello again, everybody, and good to be back. Good to see you all again. This evening, we have another interview with another exciting person, and it's Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Jackson Kelley. She is a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, but she is one who has been in various other services as well. I'm going to let her tell you about that in a little bit. But I just want to say, Colonel Jackson Kelley, I am just so happy that you were able to join us this evening, and I know what a busy woman you are. And so I really appreciate your time that you're allowing us to talk to you this evening. So thank you. Just want to say thank you, first of all, and welcome. Welcome.
Thank
So
you.
you're more than welcome. So I'm going to start out. I have just a few questions that I'm going to start, just a few little leading questions so that we can let the audience get to know who you are, first of all. And I've known I don't know how many years, I will say decades, because I've lost track of how many years that I have known this great lady, but I have known her for a very long time. And so I'm particularly honored to have her here. She is one of our former Villager Award recipients, and she's one of those who have continually come back to our Villager Awards each year in support. She's one of our trusted advisors on anything that has to do, particularly when we're selecting veterans as award recipients, because she brings such a wealth of knowledge and leadership to the table. She is the national president of the National Association of Black Military Women. She is also, and I'm gonna let her describe what that title is. I believe it's commander. Is that the correct title, ma'am? At the Jackie Robinson American Legion post here in Los Angeles, a very historic post to say the least, and just a host of other things. She's testified before Congress before. She's spoken to national audiences before. She retired as a nurse, one of the pioneers in women's veterans programs within the Department of Veterans Affairs. And so she just brings so much to the table. So I'm going to start. So I'm going to take you way back. We like to go way back in the Village Awards. So we're going to go way back to your years growing up. Sort of where were you born? Where did you grow up? A little of excitement about your childhood that you want to share with us, and we'll walk it forward from there. So Colonel Jackson Kelley, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Colonel Willingham Torrey. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this very exciting testimonial this evening. I grew up, I was born in a small town outside of New Bern, North Carolina called Messick. Um, it was a population of maybe 1,500 people. It was very a unique place because we lived in one area and it was all black, and then you would go about 10 miles away and it was all white. So that was how I grew up. My grandfather owned a grocery store, and in the grocery store, he sold beer. And as a result of him selling beer, he had primarily the white clients who came in to purchase from him. So it was a very integrated store in one area and very segregated in the neighborhood. So it was kind of a unique experience.
Interesting. Interesting. Yes. Yes. And so then tell me a little bit about that. Did you spend your entire childhood there, or did you, at what point did you leave there?
Yeah. Well, I had a unique childhood because I spent time between North Carolina and New York. My mom had moved to New York, and I was living with my grandparents, who were the parents of my dad. And my parents both remarried. So my dad lived in New Jersey, and my mother lived in New York. So I lived in between North Carolina, New York, and New Jersey, especially during the summertime. Um, it was my grandparents were, I guess, my grandfather was really one of the greatest entrepreneur that you ever want to meet. He had a large farm and he sold the products from his farm, like sweet potatoes and white potatoes and all different things he would sell off his truck. He, as a child, they were, I guess I was kind of spoiled because I had all of these places that I could live. And my grandparents kind of treasured me as a prized possession because they were older. And my grandfather used to foster in me how intelligent I was and how smart I was, and he would encourage me to spell words, and he would give me hints on the words, and then when I would get them correct, he would just applaud me, and he would just tell everybody how smart I was. So I think that that instilled in me that a kind of thing that anything was possible for me to do. I
Yeah.
think that that was instilled in me as a child.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, and it still shines brightly. It's amazing how those early childhood experiences can really shape, who we see ourselves as and who we are, I think, as adults. So I really, really appreciate that story for sure. And so, at what point did you decide? I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg. So, did you become a nurse first, or did you go into the military first, or how did all of that come about?
Well, my mom, once I graduated from high school, I went back to North Carolina and I graduated from high school. I graduated from high school at the age of 15 because I skipped a grade in elementary school. And when I graduated from high school, they offered a scholarship to go to Bennett College. And I turned it down because I said I did not want to go to an all girls school. And so I went to I went to New York to live with my mom at that point. And my mom worked at Bellevue Hospital as a nurse's aide in the psychiatric division. So I always admired my mom in all kinds of ways. So I emulated her, and I decided that I wanted to be a nurse's aide. And I started working at Bellevue.
Okay.
um, Now I can say it. I was 17, and you should be 18 to work in psychiatry. But through a unique experience, we did the birth certificate, and I started working at Bellevue. I started out as a nurse's aide, and then I decided that I wanted to go to LVN school because my mom's sister was an LVN. That's a licensed practical nurse, a licensed vocational nurse.
Mhm.
And I went to LVN school, and I just felt so unfulfilled as an LVN. I thought that I had more to offer, so I started going to RN school. I went to New York City Community College, taking a few courses at a time, and then finally I graduated. And I went to, then they started a special program at Hunter College for nurses, and enrolled in that program, and that's when I got my BSN. And that was when my military experience. Well, my military experience began before then because I had an associate degree, but I was signed up in the Navy Reserves, and you had to have a bachelor's in order to be an officer.
Yeah.
So I was in school for my bachelor's, and once I got my bachelor's, I went to the commander and told him that I wanted to be an officer.
Yeah.
And he told me, we do not have any female billets in this unit.
Oh,
So,
wow. Wow. Well, when I was listening as you were talking, even about when you got your baccalaureate, because as I recall, that was during the early years, quote unquote, of seeing African American nurses with a BSN. That was fairly uncommon, at least in my part of the country where I was living. It was rare to see that, and so she was telling me that I thought, "Wow, she was already ahead of her time as she started out here." So interesting. So what happened? Go on. Though. Let me shut you out here. It's sounding good.
okay, so after I decided, well, the Navy didn't want me, so I will go to the Army. So I applied. I went out to Brooklyn and applied at the Army base for the reserves. And
Okay.
I called. I didn't hear from them for a month or so. So I called them to inquire about my application, and they had no record of anything. even though I had done the full physical and everything. They had no record. So I was devastated, but I was not undaunted. I decided that, okay, I'll try for the Air Force Reserves.
Mhm.
Well, that was it. There was a fine young brother who told me, why are you going in the reserves? You should go on active duty. They need nurses. You can write your own ticket. You can travel. You can do all of these things. And it was sounding so glamorous. And at that time, my ex husband and I had separated.
Uh-huh.
And I was looking for an opportunity to leave New York.
Yes.
And so I felt that was the answer.
Uh-huh.
And I signed on the dotted line to go in the Air Force.
Wow. Wow. So that was the beginning. That was the actual beginning of your military career. Sound
Right.
okay. And so then how long were you in the Air Force and then what happened after that?
I was in the Air Force for 4 years, 3 months, and 29 days.
Oh wow, you jumped
And after I came off active duty, I went into the Air Force Reserves.
around.
And at that time, we had to go up to March Air Force Base for our training. And my son was young at the time. And so it was a hardship leaving him on the weekend and going for training.
Mhm.
So someone told me about an army base that they had downtown,
Uh-huh.
and it was like 15, 20 minutes away from my house. So I went and transferred to the army.
Ah, that's how the army came into the picture. Okay, all right.
And that was one of the most unusual experiences. The first year that I was there, they mobilized us to go to Colorado to augment the new hospital that was being built.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I was so excited to be going to Colorado. And little did I know that we would have to sleep in tents. I never slept in a tent before my many years in the Air Force.
Uh-huh.
So I was so upset initially. But after everyone was so nice and so supportive and told me how spoiled I was, I kind of got a grip
Yes.
and I made the best of it.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I thought I had made a terrible mistake transferring from the Air Force to the Army.
Oh my goodness. Now was it Fitzsimmons by any chance? Was that the hospital that was going up or was that after Fitzsimmons in
Sorry,
Colorado?
I didn't hear you.
I said, was a hospital Fitzsimmons that was going up or was it another hospital there? Do you
It was another hospital.
yeah, I just wondered.
I'm not, I forgot.
No, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. So that's the Army piece. Now I believe that you had Navy. Was it the Navy too? You
Yes,
mentioned.
I was in the Navy Reserves initially. I wasn't enlisted in the Navy Reserves
Uh-huh.
because I was a nurse, but I only had an associate degree,
Right.
so they didn't consider that an officer type, type person. So, in the Navy Reserves, it was interesting. We didn't really do that much. We there was a lot of educational things that you did, and I went to my first trip. I guess what you call TDY was to New Orleans for Navy school, and I thought that was the real Navy because that was one party after another. I found out that that wasn't really the Navy.
Right. Very good. So let's see. So that gives us three branches of service. Did I miss any branch? I think those were your three branches. So tell me, how did you end up with the transition? How did you end up working for the Department of Veterans Affairs?
Um, I had a friend named Ruby Laster, who was my sorority um, sister. She was in another chapter, but we were in the same sorority, the same one that you and Dr. Willingham, Chi Eta Phi sorority. And she told me that Well, actually, when I first came out of the military, okay, let me back it up. When I first came out of the military, I applied for the VA hospital.
Mm-hmm.
However, it took an extensive amount of time to get there because when you're in the military, to get references is more than a notion.
Oh,
People
yeah.
do not realize it takes an extensive amount of time. So even though I was a nurse, licensed, I still could not find a job because everyone had to wait for the references from the military. And the
Mm-hmm.
military is really, really slow about getting references. And during that time, I guess now that I look back, I was really homeless because I was staying with relatives. I
Mm-hmm.
had my son with me,
Mm-hmm.
and we were staying from place to place
Yes.
because I was living on my savings.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, that does not last very long when you're living on a day to day on your savings.
Yes.
So finally, the VA hospital called me, and I started working at the VA hospital inside on what they call the family unit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was called on 206D. It was called the family unit, and my head nurse was Geneva McVeigh, um, who was an excellent head nurse.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, I'm starting to get the flow of sort
Yeah,
of how your life goes now. This is really interesting. It really is. I mean, it's like it all was on a trajectory that was just moving forward. Sometimes we can't see that when we're young people. I've heard young people that we've interviewed, and they don't quite know what's up that road yet. But then when we get older and we look back down the road, as my mother used to say, you can start to see how all of this really ties together.